With the left hand, toss 1, 2, 3, drop 1, 2, 3. All right? And you're going to do that over and over until you got that really nice 1, 2, 3 rhythm. And then you catch it, right? You're going to start with 2 in the right hand and you're going to end with 2 in the left hand. See? 1, 2, 3, and then back the other way. 1, 2, 3, 2 in the right, 1 in the left, now back to left, 1, 2, 3. Just going back and forth, starting with the hand with 2 balls in it. All right? That's juggling. That's juggling. And then you just go ahead and instead of stopping with 2, you just go ahead and do the third in there. So for example, we go 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. And then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and so on and so forth. It's the same thing every time. How do I put this? Truly, this is really no different than this. It's just there's one more ball in the air. That's all. Okay? But let me show you this one more time, right? If I start with 2, I am going to juggle with an invisible third ball, right? There's an invisible third ball in there. And so this back and forth with 2 is no different than 3. So if you can juggle 2 balls back and forth, you can juggle 3. All right? So there you go. Give it a try. Have some fun. And with that, let's go ahead and get started. All right. Hey, you know what? I apologize. I didn't have the sound on for all that. Oh my gosh. So this is what I'm going to do. If you're interested in learning to juggle, I'm going to play that segment again. It's a 9-minute segment. I'll play it again at the end of today's lecture. So if you're curious, you can go ahead and do it and just pick it up from there. Okay? All right. So now, Sadie, what happened is you came in later. The first part of that whole spiel, you couldn't hear the sound. It was my fault. Mea culpa. Okay. I'm going to assume that you can hear me right now because you just said you can. We heard you. As I said, you couldn't hear me. There might be a little bit of static, but I've noticed that tends to go away after a few seconds. So hopefully we're okay there. I hope everyone is having a fantastic week. You know, it's amazing. It's already February. You know, it's crazy. We were looking forward to 2021 for a whole year, and now we're already, you know, past the first month. It's awesome. Okay, so this is what we're going to talk about today. We are going to talk about communicating and collaborating in the workplace with multiple generations. All right, here's the idea. Here's the point is really for the first time, we've got 4, sometimes 5 generations in the workplace. Now, why am I saying for the first time? Well, here's the thing. Generations kind of go all the way from age 15-ish, right? All the way up to 80 or so, right? Well, in the past, 15-year-olds worked paper routes and little odd jobs, and they mowed lawns and so forth. And so they weren't really in the workplace until 16, 17, 18, right? That's when folks really started to go into a workplace in the past. At the same time, the old folks, they were retiring at 55 or 60. So really, anybody over 55, 60 wasn't really in the workplace, which meant that in the old world order, you only had people that were from, say, the age 17, 18 to the age 55, 60 in the workplace, 2 or 3 generations at best, right? Well, that's not the case anymore. Today you probably had a somewhat bona fide real job at 15. Sure, it was part-time, but it was when you were pretty young. And furthermore, people aren't retiring anymore. In the old days, you'd retire at 60 and then, well, die at 65. Now, people are like starting a freaking second career at 50, all right? Myself included, right? I'm 55 years old. 50 years ago, I would have been retiring. Today, I'm starting a second career. So this means we have multiple generations in the workplace. And yes, generations do see work differently, they do communicate differently, and they do collaborate differently. And so that's what we want to explore today. Now, the way I'm going to do this is, first of all, I want to start with a disclaimer. Disclaimer. Let's read this. General research considers the generational research. Generational research considers the generation in aggregate, as a whole. Findings regarding values, ethics, expectations, and attitudes applied to your generations may differ from yours specifically, right? This doesn't invalidate the reliability or validity of the research. It simply means that you're a sentient individual. So I'm going to talk about my generation. I'm going to talk about yours. I'm going to talk about your parents, which is probably mine, your grandparents, and then youngers. And you're going to find many things that you go, well, I disagree with that. Well, that's fine. It could very well be that for you and your family and so forth, it is different. But in general, in aggregate, in total, the research I'm going to share with you is pretty robust. Furthermore, it's looking at just the generational stuff, right? But as you know from Monday's lecture, there's also, well, is it international? Where did you grow up? Even what state you grew up in, what religion you grew up in, if at all, right? So there's many, many, many things that go into making you who you are. Generation is just one of countless things that factor into your psychographic profile. Nevertheless, we're going to kind of zero in on it in today's lecture. Okay? All right. Now to do that, let me go ahead and get out of the way here. I'm going to use my own family as an example. All right? So what have we got here? This is an old picture, but it's the only picture I had in which I have 5 generations altogether. I had my grandfather. He's a traditionalist. Now, most traditionalists are no longer in the workplace, but that's not necessarily the case. My father, a baby boomer. You probably work with baby boomers. Anybody born, before 1964, I bet you work with folks like that. Then you've got Generation X. This is an old picture of me. I'm Generation X, 65. Between the year born, 65 to 80, my guess is that many of your parents are probably Generation X, right? And then you have millennials. My oldest son, John, he's a millennial, born between 81 and 94. Some of you may be millennials. I bet we have a few with us. And then I have my daughter, Sierra. She's Generation Z, born from 1995 onward. And my guess is that the majority of you are Generation Z. If you are in my class, statistically, looking at Salt Lake Community College data, the majority of you are Generation Z with a few millennials thrown in there for good measure, okay? So I'm going to use my family as an example as we go through and kind of explore what these people are all about, all right? So the way I'm going to do this is I'm first going to introduce you to each generation, the main generations. I'm not going to include traditionalists because you don't really work with too many traditionalists, but I am going to start with baby boomer and go all the way down to Gen Z. I want to introduce you to the generations, and then what we're going to do is we're going to look at how these generations come together in the workplace how their values influence their attitudes toward work and their communication. Okay? So, now as I go through this, I would love to hear your stories. Oh my holy heck. So, let's get my hand-a-danda marker. Where's my marker? Highlighter. You see all this? I would love to see this thing built up, especially with some real-world examples. So, share a little bit about your generations. Baby boomers are, my guess, going to be your grandparents, right? Generally, your grandparents and so forth. Let's talk about them a little bit. So, your grandparents, the baby boomers, they grew up in a time of relative prosperity. It was just after World War II. And so the economy was booming, baby. I mean, we had a gangbuster economy, not immediately after World War II, because we had to kind of shift production from military to domestic. But once we did, it was a pretty great economy. And everybody started to go to college. Everybody started to, see themselves growing and prospering. So yeah, first generation generally to go to college. Values, they're very optimistic, friendly, proud of their strong work ethic. Guys, when it comes to the baby boomers, this whole thing of their work ethic is going to come up over and over and over, right? Think about this. When your grandparents come to visit or whatever, and you're sitting down playing a video game or something or another, what's their response? They're like, hey, what are you doing with your life? Get up and do something, be productive, right? And you're like, I'm playing a video game. I'm fine. And they're like, you're burning daylight, that sort of thing. And like I say, the work ethic, extremely hardworking, dedicated. They want to be recognized for their contributions. They really see their work and their position as defining their self-worth. They define their worth as a person through their work ethic, right? So to them, the idea of being lazy and sitting around and doing nothing just really flows counter to a baby boomer. When it comes to authority, yeah, and you work with these people, so you want to think about how they view authority. They believe in hierarchical structures, and I don't need that apostrophe there. Power and authority needs to be earned, and once you earn it, you should respect it. So in the mindset of a baby boomer, I earned my authority, and therefore you should respect it. When you kind of back talk a baby boomer, doesn't tend to turn out very well. They don't like to be challenged. In general, in aggregate. Remember my caveat, right? Okay, so let me tell you a little bit about my father. You may not be able to read this terribly well. I need to change that. So my father was the first in his family to earn a college degree. He was frustrated that his new thumb drive did not come with instructions. Yeah, not too long ago, he bought a thumb drive and couldn't figure out how to use it, and it didn't come with instructions. They don't really do well with technology. Think about it. Has anybody here ever had to teach their grandparents how to use a phone or a computer or a tablet? I mean, a smartphone, one of these, right? Have you ever tried to teach them how to use one of those things? It's maddening, right? Well, for these folks, not a whole lot changed in their lifetime up until the last few decades. So my father, oh yeah, okay. So Mikkel, there we go. Michael, all the time. There we go, right? So here's our contributor, and yeah, real world, totally, right? It's maddening. This is how he views work, and he's also kind of counterculture. Regularly hired undocumented workers and paid them really well, because they worked hard and earned it. And if you ever want to talk sometime about this, I'd love to share stories because he really taught me a lot about this. For him, if you're a hard worker, that's all you need to be in his good graces. He doesn't care about anything else. If you're a hard worker and work your ass off, he's going to pay you well and he'll ignore everything else. I've got stories about that. But that's how important work ethic was to him, right? Teaching my grandma how to use a flip phone. Oh, yeah, totally, right? Yeah, I get you, Taylor. Okay, let's continue on. Let's look at Gen Xers. This is my generation and is probably the generation of most of you. I mean, not you, I'm sorry, your parents. Most of you, your parents might be Generation Xers, so if they were born like 1965 to somewhere in 80 or so, right? So, what's Generation X like? Well, when they grew up, they were latchkey kids. Now, let me explain what we mean by latchkey kids. Because the baby boomers were so hardworking and were always working and they were always off and so on and so forth, their locus of self-esteem, their raison d'etre was work. It wasn't raising a family. And so oftentimes, this was the first generation that really the mothers started to work a lot as well. And so there was nobody around to raise the kids. And so a latchkey kid is the parents give the kid a key to the house and say, you're on your own. Come home after school, do your homework. After you do your homework, you can watch some TV, get something to eat and so forth. I'll be home at 6. So either because there was a lot of divorce or working mothers, these kids grew up pretty independently, all right? Highly educated. These folks really feel like education is the bomb. And so think about your parents or think about their circle where they're pressing college. It could be that you're in college right now because your parents really pushed it, or your aunts and uncles really pushed it, perhaps, right? To this generation, education is everything. Values. They're very independent and self-reliant. Remember, these were latchkey kids. They pretty much raised themselves. And so, yeah, they're really independent and self-reliant, pragmatic, direct, informal. Very informal, right? This is, these folks don't really, truck with things like formality and pomp and circumstance. Now, this is going to come back to haunt us here in a moment. Determined to give their own children the childhood they never had. So now, I want you to kind of embrace this for a moment. They were latchkey kids, this generation, which means they didn't have a lot of parent oversight and so forth, and they didn't really have a childhood, right? And so as they're growing up, they're saying, well, I'm going to make sure that my kids don't have a crappy childhood like I did. I'm going to make sure that, there's somebody at home and they have all kinds of opportunities and they can experience childhood and not have to grow up overnight and be independent and pragmatic at the age of 10. Okay? Hold on to that. We're going to come back to that. Work ethic. They want some work-life balance. They don't just live to work. They want some work-life balance. Don't really go on for long hours, job titles. They're not totally loyal to employers. I don't know if any of you ever had your grandparents say this. I had my grandparents say this, but he's a traditionalist. But tell me if you've ever heard this sort of thing before. They come up to you and say, let me tell you, here's the secret to life. You go ahead, you get an education, you get a skill, you get on with a good company, and you stay with that company for the rest of your life, and you retire from that company. The older generations were very, very loyal to companies. Whereas the Generation Xers are more loyal to their profession. So, for example, I was in HR, and if I'm working with HR in one company and they're treating me well enough, but I see an opportunity to move up in HR with another company and to get new skills, I will go to that other company because I want to develop myself as an HR professional. So I'm not loyal to the company, I'm loyal to the profession and career path that I chose. When it comes to authority, cynical, questioning authority, and disliking direct supervision. Yeah. Do not align themselves with teams, will work with colleagues to achieve a common goal, but they're not into teamwork. Now remember, these people are independent and self-reliant. They were pretty much raised themselves. They're not really into the teamwork thing. All right, so with that, let me tell you a little bit about myself and where my life, there's a confluence between the generational research and my life. My mother left when I was 12. My brother and I raised ourselves as my father was always working. So I was a latchkey kid. I saw my father for probably 10, 20 minutes a day for 10 years of my life, right? We pretty much raised ourselves. I moved to France when I was 15, went to a French school, spent the summer hitchhiking across Europe. I'm 15 years old and I'm hitchhiking across Europe, living in France. I'm very independent and self-reliant. By the way, you see that picture right there? See what those are? Those are juggling pins. I hitchhiked around Europe juggling. Okay? You could also see I was really skinny. We starved. All right? I've earned 3 college degrees and 1 certification, and I'm still in college today, earning my next degree. So, yeah, where I was into education, right? Yeah, Taylor, I'll tell you some stories on it sometime. Great stories. I like them anyway. Okay, my children always had one parent at home. Remember when I said, hey, we're going to make sure our kids don't, they have a childhood that we didn't? My wife and I, when we got married, we agreed early on that one of us would always be at home with the children, which means we really had to juggle work and college schedules because we both believed in college, right? And so, yeah, she was working, I'd be in school, I'd be working, she'd be in school, and we always juggled that. I don't play well with others. I'm not into teamwork. Now, I know you're like, well, holy hell, dude, wait, what do you get? You're requiring us to work in a team in this class. Okay, listen, just because I'm not good at it doesn't mean it is not a vital skill in the business world. Teamwork truly is a vital skill. And yes, I have actually worked on some teams that were beautiful. All right, I could tell you stories if you like sometime about some of the best teams I've ever worked with. And I am as close with some of those people as I am with my family in many ways, right? So teamwork is an absolutely vital skill. But I've got news for you. If you are in a position of authority in the workplace and you are putting together a team, don't make Gen Xers your first choice, all right? Your first choice is going to be millennials. Millennials kick ass in teams. We're going to come back to that. Okay. All right. So, yeah, I'm very Generation Z, right? Or X, Generation X. I'm curious if your parents kind of show any of these things. I don't know. Share if you feel like it, right? All right. Let's keep going. Let's do millennials. I just want to say, by the way, millennials have gotten a totally bum rap, all right? Millennials are the generation that everybody loves to hate, but they don't know what they're talking about, All right. So let's talk about millennials, and let me share with you why millennials are actually pretty awesome. All right. And maybe we have some millennials with us. If you're born 1980, to 1994, so you're a millennial. All right. So growing up, millennials. Well, here's the thing. We screwed up as parents. And let me explain what I mean. They grew up being escorted and supervised by protective parents who were extremely cautious of kidnappings, school violence, and drugs. Please share with me, did you grow up with your parents checking your Halloween candy for razor blades? Did your parents really want to make sure you were home before dark and you better call because stranger danger? And were they just like freaking out about drugs in school and so forth? So here's the thing. Gen X, right? My generation, Gen X, we said, we're going to give our kids the childhood we never had. And we became helicopter parents. We were hovering over our kids in this generation constantly, not letting them really make mistakes, get hurt, learn lessons. And we were freaking them out the whole time. The world's a dangerous place. All right, so yeah, this has an effect. So Michael, my dad was very Gen X since he was raised in a single parent home, being, yeah, great example. Very Gen X. Let's come back over here. Oh, wrong button. All right, great example. Yes. And Taylor says, millennial here. I remember my parents telling me that if anyone tries to kidnap you, kick, scream, and try to bite. Well, I'm still 32 years old, remember, right? Okay, guys, this is really good. I want you to think about this for a moment. Oh, wrong direction, dude. Wrong direction. There we go. Oh, I'm doing it again. All right. I'm just so lost. We're going to just take this up to 6. Here's the thing, guys. Very good. Yes. Taylor's parents aren't wrong. If somebody tries to kidnap you, bite, kick, scream, holler, all that sort of stuff, they're not wrong. But the odds of that happening are so minuscule, and yet you're placing terror in the heart of your child. You're freaking them out. You're making them afraid of the world, afraid of people, and afraid of what might be, in the 1% of 1% of 1% chance that something happens. Now, I talk in extremes to make a point, but I think you see what I'm saying is that our generation, my generation, really kind of scared our kids into looking for danger everywhere, right? Yeah, good advice, but still, right? Okay. Hey, you millennials, you were the first generation with your own calendar. What do I mean by that? Okay, just do me a favor. When I'm gonna say, hey, has anybody here done this, and this? Just go ahead and just type in yes if you hear something that yeah, you did, right? And you'll get we'll rack up this stuff. So did any of you have music lessons, piano or violin or something that your parents had to drive you to? Were any of you on soccer teams or baseball teams or football or things like that? Were any of you on sports teams where, okay, we have practice at this time and we have these meets and these races we have to go to, and just things like that, right? Now, check all this out. We're getting, and by the way, you just took it. We're taking this up to 10. Okay? And we're taking this up to 10. We'll get there. Which means you know it means. Let's go ahead and send out, after the lecture, you want to send me an email that says, let's see, what is it? Let's do 8:58. 8:58. There's our timestamp. Email the 8:58 timestamp, and you know what that means. Okay, so guys, look, all of you had events. You had music lessons, you had sports, you had cheer, drill. My daughter, it was cheer and drill and piano lessons and things like that. Now, she's not millennial, she's Gen Z, but you get it, right? You had your own flipping calendar, people. Now, my generation, we didn't have our own calendar. If you want to take a lesson, you sign up and get on your bicycle and go because I'm at work, says the parent, right? But remember, Gen X says, oh, we want to give our children the childhood we never have. And so we loaded up your schedule with all kinds of events. For us, the measure of providing our children a good childhood was by how many things we can sign them up for and how busy they are. I'll even go so far as to call this suburban bling. What I mean by suburban bling is parents are almost sort of competitive about how much opportunity they give their kids. You know, oh, well, my daughter, she first goes to cheer and then she has to go to piano. And we have to do that really fast because afterwards she's going off to swim lessons, you know, because she's on this team and she's trying to get to nationals. And it's like, shut up. But my generation really loved doing that for our kids. And I did. It's suburban bling. Wrong button, long. Okay, so you see what I mean. Now let's look at the values of millennials. Motivated by the need for a sense of belonging, to belong to a meaningful community. Now, the Generation Xers, they didn't care about community and stuff. Millennials really do. It shouldn't be surprising to any of us that millennials invented social media. All right? Next time you go off and you diss millennials, they invented all of this. Facebook, the internet, academics did that, but Facebook and YouTube and Twitter and Instagram and Snapchat and TikTok, those are all millennials. All right? So they like to build meaningful communities, which is what the social media was really meant to do. I don't think it has, but that was the goal. Enjoy experimenting and discovering new solutions to problems. Millennials do not truck with the idea that if it works, don't fix it. No, they like to screw around with things. They'll break and fix and mess with things all the time that some baby boomer says, it works fine, what's your problem? Work ethic. Millennials like to have work-life social balance, okay? Millennials, I know this sounds weird, guys, but I just want to express this. Millennials like to hang out with friends. Now, I say that, and there might be a part of you going, well, come on, dude. Everybody likes to hang out with friends. No, no. Gen Xers, we don't hang out with friends. We don't hang out with friends. That's weird. We stopped hanging out with friends after high school. After that, it's, go independent, self-reliant, remember? That's not something we really do. So I'm willing to bet that with many of you, you have more friends and hang out with your friends than your parents have friends and hang out with theirs. For your parents, their best friend might be their spouse or partner. Okay? So that's kind of the difference there. Hey, you know what? Ambitious and motivated by money. All right, we're going to come back to that. Expect frequent raises and promotions. All right? We're going to come back to that as well. Authority, desire, praise and validation from employers, desire, supervision, feedback, clear goals, and structure. Learn best through mentoring programs. Now, none of that on authority should be surprising. All right, think about this. If they've spent their whole lives being taken from sporting to music to activity and so on and so forth, then they really like structure. They really like direction from coaches and mentors. Millennials take feedback better than anybody else. Millennials take feedback better than anybody else because they've experienced their whole lives getting feedback from all of these mentors, coaches, teachers, friends, and so on and so forth. Now, if they're getting praise and validation from employers, what's the best way to get praise and validation from an employer? Well, with frequent raises and promotions. So a lot of people diss millennials saying, oh, they're greedy. You've heard it. They're like, oh, you know what? We hired this millennial and she's only been with us for 3 months and now she wants a raise. And now this person, he's only been with us for 6 months and he wants a promotion. They're so greedy. They don't know that you have to earn this. No, that's not what's going through their mind. What's going through their mind is, I am looking for feedback that I am doing a good job. And a great way for an employer to give feedback that I'm doing a great job is to give me a little bit of raise, saying, yes, you're adding value to the company, and to give me a little bit more responsibility, saying, you've done well with the responsibility we gave you thus far. We're going to give you a little bit more because you're doing a good job. Raises and promotions are a form of affirmation to a millennial that they're doing a good job, and they like that affirmation. Whereas it's the baby boomers who say, oh, well, you got to earn your way up and so forth. And it's like, you know what? I don't see it the same way. So just something to bear in mind there. Okay, so let's talk about John a little bit. He's my oldest son. You know, when he was growing up, he lacked confidence in himself and so kind of struggled to get out in the world. This is really common with millennials because we managed to scare the living bejesus out of them by saying that everybody wants to kidnap you and give you drugs, right? Now, he's doing really well now. He's doing really well now. But back in my day, says the old man, when you turned 18, you were given suitcases as a present for your 18th birthday. Not kidding, that was a Schiff-Bauer tradition. And you were kicked out the door. I was kicked out the door. It took him a little bit longer, right? It takes many a little longer. Values validation from those he respects and admires. He really likes mentorship and guidance and just kind of ideas from those he admires. He's not looking for, how should I live my life? He's looking for, give me some thoughts and guidance and insight, and I will process it the way I choose to. Loves trying new things and seeing where they could lead, right? Millennials are often accused of like chasing shiny objects. They just like to try new things, play things out. Sadie says, would you say millennials are more sheltered? As a generation, by and large, yes, okay? Because we sheltered them, the helicopter parents, right? That said, again, you might be different as an individual. Your friends who are millennials or your parents might be different as individuals. We're not taking into account nationality, culture, what state, what religion, anything like that. But yeah, in general, millennials were more sheltered. Sees work as necessary to pay the bills, but something that should not infringe on his social activities. This is something that a lot of employers really struggle with is, you know, baby boomers are like, I live to work. I live to work. The only way I see myself as a valuable human being and contributor to society is through my work. Millennials are like, dude, chill out. Sure, I need money to pay the bills, but I can live a pretty minimalist lifestyle. I want to have time for myself. I want to have time to hang out with my friends, right? So my son John here, he still plays D&D with his friends, okay? He's in his 30s and he plays D&D. Now, to older generations, it's like, isn't that a children's game? To this generation, it's like, no, this is a form of engaging with friends and having fun, and they play board games and so on and so forth. They want to have time for those social activities. Okay, let's move on to Generation Z. Many of you are probably Generation Z. If you were born in 1996 or later, you're Generation Z. So, my daughter here, Sierra, she's Generation Z. Let's talk about these folks. They grew up witnessing the Great Recession. Generation Z saw the Great Recession and said, oh, I think I want to be a little bit careful about getting into debt. I think I want to be a little more self-reliant. We're going to come back to that because they're seeing this Great Recession just totally hose their parents. In a never-ending stream of real-time news, dialogue, video, social interaction, and entertainment. Yes, this is the digital generation, the digital natives. They are always plugged in. Now, go ahead and give them a hard time. But you know what? When newspapers came out, everybody was always reading the newspaper. When the radio came out, everybody was always listening to the radio. When TV came out, everybody was always watching the TV. Every generation is always doing something in terms of media. This generation just happens to have a whole bunch. Values. Global, the digital world having erased socioeconomic status and geographies. Let me give you an example. You Gen Zers and Millennials as well, you're welcome to chime in. Do you have somebody in Instagram or Facebook or TikTok or any of the social media platforms that you use? Are you connected with anybody in another country? So let me know who here has friends or connections, or you follow people in another country. Now, the internet has made the world really small. And so thinking globally for this generation is very natural. Accepting of social diversity. Yes. And by the way, Sadie, let's see, Josh says, friends in multiple countries, Elias, Michael, Taylor. Yes, best part of the internet. Best part of the internet. I agree with you. This generation is all about social diversity. All right, we're going to come back to that. But yeah, it'll be fun. They expect information on demand, right? This is something that older generations, especially in academia, kind of really struggle with, because the old world tradition of academia, what we're doing right now, is, hey, listen, here's a textbook, read this chapter, and then come back and we'll discuss it, so on and so forth. And this generation says, you know what? I'll get the information when I need it. I don't need it right now. When I need it, I'll Google it. It'll be right there. I'm done, right? So for example, when it comes to the videos that I use in this class that you guys have been watching, the viewership, I have access to all the data on my viewership. It skyrockets just before the assignment is due. Now, is that bad? No, that's information on demand. And furthermore, I want to know exactly what I need to focus on when it comes time to focus on it. Okay, work ethic. Gen Z, you are optimistic about the future. Thank goodness. Because there's no ground. As an old man, I am required under law and moral obligation to state the following. The world is going to hell in a handbasket. That's what all old people say. The world is going to hell in a handbasket. It's not. It's not, because this generation is going to take care of us. All right. Entrepreneurial, believe that they will work for themselves one day. Now remember, they grew up during the Great Recession. And they saw company after company laying off their parents, their aunts, their uncles, so on and so forth. And they said, that sucks and blows at the same time. I'm not going to make myself vulnerable to economic, whims like that. So I'm going to work for myself one day. This is the most entrepreneurial generation. Now, I don't know if anybody has experienced this. Let me know if you have. But here's what often happens with young folks. They go to somebody older and say, I'm going to start my own business one day. And the old person says, that's nice, pat you on the head, and don't take it seriously. Or they say, well, okay, you understand that's really hard. It's probably better just to get with a good company and stay with them. Or they're like, what are you going to start a business in? What do you know anything about? For older generations, the idea of starting a business is fraught with risk and uncertainty, and they're not really hip to that. Generation Z is totally fine with it. Organically collaborative. If you're building teams, guys, you want teams with Millennials and Generation Z. Generation Z and Millennials know how to work on teams better than Gen X. I'm just going to say it. You're better at it than I am. Authority? Want high-intensity relationships with those in authority. This is weird to me, okay? But let me give you an example. A high-intensity relationship with those in authority. Generation Zs, who here considers your parents friends? Your parents are your friends. You feel like you have some level of friendship with your parents. Does anybody here feel that way, Generation Z? I'd love to see your thoughts there. Okay, Josh, hell yeah, they are. Oh my gosh, look at that emphatic, hell yeah, they are. Sure, yeah, says Sadie. My mom is my best friend, says Taylor. Ryan Taylor's more millennial, but same thing, right? That is freaking weird to old generations, okay? The idea that your parents are your friends is, Sadie, to a certain extent, yeah, right? To me, my parent is somebody who was invisible, and I was scared to death of him. That's what you're supposed to be of your father. You're scared to death of him, right? So the idea that parents are friends is weird. But my daughter, and then another son who I've not featured here, they totally consider my wife and I, their parents, friends. And I'm going to be honest with you, sometimes it's weird. Sometimes I have a hard time being a friend, but I love these kids, and so I have to work hard to say, no. They really want high-intensity relationships with those in authority, and I love my kids, and so I'm going to provide that, right? Yeah. Matt, way closer to your mom than your dad. Yeah, my daughter is closer to mom, and my son is closer to me, right? It just goes different ways. Yeah. Okay, so let's talk about Sierra here. Sierra is highly self-driven, earned a medical assistant certification in high school. She had her associate's degree by 19, is now a student at the U. It's like, dude, right? But this is what they're like. Lives on her own and manages her own schedule. Now, her birthday is Thursday. She turns 20 on Thursday, but she's like been independent forever. Really embraces diversity, very supportive of LGBTQ causes. We're going to come back and talk about that. But this generation, in general, in aggregate, compared to other generations, is much more tolerant and embracing of diversity. Okay? All right. So let's talk about that. Let's look at how all these people now come together in the workplace and see what happens. All right? So let's talk about attitudes toward work. All right? Remember, baby boomers are extremely hardworking, driven, dedicated, positive, positions equal self-worth. Gen X, on the other hand, I don't work exceptionally long hours or for money or titles. Screw that, I don't care. Millennials expect frequent raises and promotions. And so what happens when a millennial goes to a baby boomer boss and says, I expect frequent raises and promotions? The baby boomer is going to be like, you kids these days, you don't know what it is like to have to earn a living. You want everything handed to you. On the other hand, when the baby boomer is actually out there working his ass off and so on and so forth and expecting Gen X and millennials to admire him, these guys are like, dude, doesn't this guy have a life? I mean, how sad do you have to be to like always need to work? There's so much more out there, right? I'm curious if any of you in your workplaces have kind of bumped up against these sort of expectations. So feel free to chime in there. And by the way, that would go toward real world examples. It'd be cool if we could get that up to 10. Okay. How about authority? Respect my authority. I need to get a little Cartman animation to come in here, right? Which I haven't been using. I need to use my animations more. Okay, so authority. Baby boomers believe positions of power and authority are earned and should be respected. You don't talk back to your grandparents. Baby boomers don't like to be challenged and disrespected when they've been working in this industry for 30 years. What do you know, you young kid, right? Whereas Generation X is cynical, questioning authority, dislikes direct supervision. I just dropped my headphones. I love all this. I love this. Why? Why do I love this? Do you see my boss anywhere? No, you don't see my boss anywhere. Do you see anybody telling me how to do anything or how to do it? No, I make all this up myself. I try different things, try juggling, try something else. By the way, next week, we'll be using puppets. Nobody's here to tell me what to do. I love it. Millennials, on the other hand, desire supervision and feedback, clear goals and structure. So here's the thing. If a millennial is going to a Gen X and say, hey, I really want some supervision and feedback. I want to know how I'm doing. And can you help me set up some clear goals and so forth and some structure? The Generation X could very well be like, listen, just do the work, man. I don't know, right? Yeah. On the other hand, when a baby boomer tries to tell Gen X how to do things, Gen X pushes back every time, right? Okay, Michael, that's the way that my boss is, in terms of Gen X. Very good, yes. So you kind of see this a little bit. Okay, let's keep going. Social diversity. Okay, I want to talk about this one. Now, in this case, instead of my father and my son, I've included my grandfather, the traditionalist, and my daughter, the Gen Z, to help kind of demonstrate how this works, right? Real quick, by the way, Taylor says, I work a lot with Gen X, and I cannot tell you how hard it is to change anything at work. Very nice. Very nice. Okay, so let's look at this. The traditionalist and some baby boomers, traditions regarding family, religion, work, and government are important. Tradition is important. We like things to stay the way they are. Generation X, pragmatic, direct, and informal. Okay? Generation Z, accepting of social diversity. Now, let me show you how this plays out in the world, in the workplace. I'm gonna kind of stand up a little bit and well, gosh, I want to have their pictures. Will it work if I do pictures? If I do this? Yeah, we see their pictures. Okay, so here's the thing. Let's talk about the transgender movement and bathrooms. Okay? Now, this is a real workplace communication issue. How are we going to make sure that we work together, collaborate together, respect one another, and are at the top of Maslow's hierarchy of needs? Well, we first need to make sure we have the bottom set of Maslow's hierarchy of needs all set, and that includes things like bathrooms. Okay? So, if we talk to a traditionalist, this guy, my grandfather, and he's passed on, so I can't say that he would say exactly this, but I'm going to guess. He'd say, hey, transgender, somebody who identifies as a gender other than that which is on their birth certificate, what bathroom should they use? My grandfather would say, holy hell, what? So I don't understand why we're asking this question. It's not rocket science. You'll look at the picture on the door, and you'll look at the equipment in your shorts, and you figure out where there's a match. If you're a guy, you go in the guys. If you're a gal, you go in the gals. And if you don't know if you're a guy or a gal, check the equipment. That'll tell you. All right? That's traditionalist. Not very accepting of social diversity. On the other hand, you then have Generation Z, my generation, who is pragmatic and informal. And we say, okay, listen, I guess, I don't know. I don't want to spend a lot of time on this question. Let's just be pragmatic about this and direct. I'll tell you what we'll do. We're going to set up a third bathroom. We're going to set up a guy's bathroom. We're going to set up a gal's bathroom. And then we're going to set up a gender-neutral bathroom that anybody can use. And I'll even tell you what, we'll call it a family bathroom. That way, anybody can use that bathroom. All right? It's pragmatic. It solves the problem. It's direct. Let's move on. And if you notice, if you go to a mall, I know you don't go to malls anymore, especially in COVID, right? If you go to a mall, you find a lot of malls with family bathrooms so that a mother or a father can take in a son or a daughter and not have to worry about it. Well, family bathrooms are basically unisex bathrooms. And this is kind of a pragmatic way of addressing this problem. Generation Z, on the other hand, my daughter's generation. And yes, I have had this conversation with my daughter. She's like, I don't even understand why we're talking about this. Nobody is going to audit my junk in the bathroom. And I sure as hell am not going to audit somebody else's junk in the bathroom. There are stalls. I don't care. Anybody can use any bathroom. It doesn't matter. Who are the gender police? Who's going to check? And have you ever wondered in the past? Who knows who's been sitting next to you in a different stall? It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. Let anybody use any bathroom. Okay, now imagine these ideas coming together in the workplace and trying to figure out, okay, what's going to be our policy and our practice when it comes to this and many, many, many other social issues, right? So social diversity is seen differently by these different generations. All right, let's keep going. Let's look at how they like to lead, follow, and collaborate. All right, this is our last part. Baby boomers, think about your baby boomer boss. Baby boomer boss, say that 5 times fast. Baby boomer boss, they like to lead through consensus. They do not like to be challenged. They believe their authority matters and should be respected. Respect my authority. Generation X, on the other hand, my generation, many of your parents' generation, they lead through knowledge. Like to be challenged, but will challenge in return. All right? I love to be challenged, but understand I'm going to challenge back. Believe everyone is equal. It just so happens that in this circumstance, I know more and so should lead. So, for example, right now I'm the leader. I'm the leader. Why am I the leader? Because in this situation, at this moment, I know more about the subject matter than most others who are with us right now. There may be somebody with us who knows more. I don't know. But we're just going to say, for the sake of argument, that at this moment I know more. But I freaking guarantee you, you guys know a whole lot more about other things that I know nothing about. And if that were our topic, or if that's what we were teaching on, or anything like that, I would be listening to you. You would be the leader. If one of you is a musician and you're trying to teach me how to play the guitar, you're the leader, I'm the follower. It just matters who has the knowledge at that time. Millennials like to lead through ability, like to be seen as a mentor, believe that they are all in the same boat together, that there's no us versus them. These are people I'd like to have on my team. All right? They collaborate really well. We'll come back to that. How do they follow? Well, baby boomers want to be respected for their hard work. They don't want to be criticized, and they don't want to have to change. Remember, there's no directions with a thumb drive, Dad, right? My mom watches these sometimes. My dad doesn't. But Dad, if you're watching this, there's no instructions. You just plug it in. All right. Generation X, how do we like to follow? We want to be respected for what we do. So you see all this, guys? All this that I do? I genuinely want to be respected for this. I feel like I put in a lot of work. I put in a lot of experimentation. I spend a lot of time learning how to use all this equipment. I invest in the equipment, and I am trying to bring about a learning teaching experience that is a notch above your standard webinar. I don't know that it works. I honestly don't know that it works, but I want to be respected for the effort that I've put in. And so that's what we mean by want to be respected for what they do, want to be recognized for their contributions, can change if it's the right thing to do. If it's the right thing to do, we can go ahead and change. Millennials, how do they like to follow? They want to be respected for who they want to become. Do not belittle the ambitions and dreams of a millennial. They have dreams, ambitions, goals, aspirations. They want to be respected for what they think they can become. They like to be mentored and guided. They're totally good at taking feedback. And quick to change, since it's the natural order of things. Change is natural. Change is normal. Michael James says, has anyone cross-examined the parallels between MBTI personalities in general and generational standing? That would be really interesting. So for those of you playing at home, MBTI is an assessment. Is that the Myers-Briggs? I think Myers-Briggs is the MBTI. There are other assessment instruments out there as well. I'm a big fan of StrengthsFinder, StrengthsQuest, and then there's some others as well. Yes, that has been done, Michael. I don't have the data in front of me. I have seen data along those lines. That would be really, really interesting to explore because, yes, there have been parallels. There have been parallels. So great question. Great question. I want to give that some sort of credit. So I'm going to put that on a real world example. Very good. Okay. Last one, how they like to collaborate. All right. Boomers work well in teams. They follow directions. Leaders lead, followers follow. It's pretty simple. Leaders lead, followers follow. Individuals subordinate themselves for the team. You're nothing. Team is everything. That's a boomer. Generation X, you don't want them on your team. You just don't want them on your team. I know, individuals. It depends, right? But they don't work well in teams. Directions from leaders are really seen as suggestions. And I'm going to tell you the truth. And Barbie, my boss, if you're watching this, Barbie, yeah. When my boss says, hey, this is what we need to do, my response is, I'll take it under consideration. I'll take it under advisement. But ultimately, I'm going to do what I think is best, right? It's just the way it is. Teams work best if everybody works independently. Yeah, that's the way these guys are on collaborating, okay? Millennials, on the other hand, and Gen Z as well, collaborate organically. Directions are the beginnings of a continuous feedback loop. Oh my gosh, that is a superpower, millennials and Gen Zers. Feedback loops. Teams work best when the leader inspires individuals to do the work that they love and then get out of the way. So once again, millennials tend to be the generation that everybody likes to trash. Bad idea. Bad idea. Okay. Michael Wayne, this reminds me of the perception of failure across cultures. Boomers are very critical and generations become open. Yeah, so that is a great reference to on Monday's lecture, right? When we are talking about masculine cultures versus feminine cultures. Masculine cultures, oh, failure's not an option. You should jump in front of a train if you fail, which has happened in a masculine culture. Or failure is just part of the learning process, dude. Isn't failure awesome? Which is what I try to promote in the classes, okay? Great, great point, great point. And folks, there you go. Oh my gosh, you were awesome today. And just so, because I feel strongly that you guys did particularly well today, I'm going to give that a 10. And so, yeah, we're going to have that come up again. So you'll get a little something extra. You don't need to send a second email. Just one email with the timestamp is going to be plenty, okay? And what I'm going to do is afterwards, I'll go ahead and, let's discard that and pull this up. And I'll go ahead and play the juggling video again if you want to learn to juggle. You can enjoy. I'll be here while that's going. So if you have any questions or comments, let me know. But otherwise, everyone, really, thank you for your contributions today. Your contributions are the difference between me feeling like I'm just talking to a lens, the black eye of death, versus I'm in the room with you having fun with some ideas. All right? So there you go. Everyone, have a fantastic day and week, and we'll see you on Monday. Okay, start recording. All right. Hey guys, for this little I don't know, opening act. I'm going to teach you how to juggle. Now, I've been juggling for many, many years, probably since I was in junior high, something like that. This is a beanbag from my original set of juggling balls. These are from back then. There was a book and some juggling balls, and it's probably still around, called Juggling for the Complete Klutz. And this is the one beanbag I have left from that set I had as a kid for Juggling for the Complete Klutz. I have these two other beanbags, again, Juggling for the Complete Klutz bags. This one I think was from my very best friend, who kind of took it up, screwed around, and then said forget about it, and he gave me his balls, and I have one left. And this was from my first girlfriend back in junior high, right? I mean, weird. Same thing. She tried it, fun, okay, whatever, and then she gave me her beanbags, and I have one left. So I actually have 3 originals left. But for this little lesson, I'm going to use some professional juggling balls. I got these only recently. I don't use professional gear. I could never afford it. But it's easier for you to see. So we have 3 balls. We're going to start with one. We're going to start with one, kind of talk about positioning and exercises and so forth. So first of all, when you hold the ball, you tend to hold it in your fingers. You don't hold it in the palm of your hand so much. It's mostly in the fingers, all right? It gives you a little bit more lift and so on. Your elbows are, 45-degree angle or so to start with, and not super tight, but not way out here, just kind of naturally laying. And then you want to go ahead and toss the ball from one hand to another, just like this. Now, there's a few things to think about, all right? First of all, you notice the height is maybe just a little bit above eye level. You're not throwing it way the heck up there, and you're not just throwing it across like this. Going just a little bit above eye level. You also notice I'm leaving my arms where they were originally. And I don't have to hurl it or do big body motions. It's pretty small motions with the arms. So, it's almost like you're a mannequin with just your arms going back and forth just a little bit, okay? Now, I know this sounds weird, but you really want to practice this for like 5 minutes or so. I know it's getting lower, but you want to practice this for about 5 minutes or so, because you want the feeling to be really natural. You don't want to have to think about the height. You don't want to have to think about how much you're moving your arms. And you just want it to be a natural kind of muscle memory toss. Now, as you practice, you're going to find yourself slipping. You're going to find yourself doing big motions, laying your arms down and kind of, no, you really want to focus on the toss. Okay? Now, once you've done that a while, you want to pick up a second ball. And it's really just 2 tosses, one from one to the other. Now, I'm moving this out of the way. Ooh, sorry about that. I'm moving this out of the way because your first exercise is going to be to throw them 1, 2, and let them drop to the ground. And when they drop to the ground, you should hear them fall 1, 2. So, for example, 1, 2. All right, they fell to the ground. I assume you could hear that somewhat in a 1, 2 fashion. I threw with the right hand first. Now I'm going to throw with the left hand first. 1, 2. All right? Now, here's the idea. You're going to be really tempted to throw one and get the other one out of your hand as quickly as possible. And so they're going to kind of go at the same time. So you're going to go, and that's not right, okay? So you just want to let them fall to the ground, 1, 2, switching your starting hand each time. So start with the right, 1, 2, and then start with the left, 1, 2. So one more time, 1, 2, and then with the left, All right. So once you've done that a few times and you have a real good sense for the rhythm, just catch them. You already know how to catch them. You practice for 5 minutes. You ought to be able to catch a couple of balls, right? So you just go 1, 2. And you want to hear that slap, 1, 2. Now start with the left hand. And there you go. And you just go back and forth from the right hand to the left hand, starting with the right and starting with the left. And you want to practice that for a good 5 minutes or so. You want that to feel supernatural. 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. Okay? Now we're going to add the third ball. Now, I know this sounds weird, but even when you were doing 2, if I just go back to 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, the third ball was already there. It's just always in the air, okay? So it's really not physically different to juggle the third ball. It's just that mental leap that, oh my gosh, now there's 3 balls and I only have 2 hands, right? But trust me, the motion is the same. So what we're going to do is we're going to start with letting them drop to the ground again. This time we want to hear 1, 2, 3. So starting with the right hand, 2 balls in the right hand, we're going to toss them 1, 2, 3 and let them drop 1, 2, 3. You see? And then you go ahead and start with the left hand. Toss 1, 2, 3, drop 1, 2, 3. All right? And you're going to do that over and over until you got that really nice 1, 2, 3 rhythm. And then you catch it, right? You're going to start with 2 in the right hand and you're going to end with 2 in the left hand. See? 1, 2, 3, and then back the other way. 1, 2, 3. 2 in the right, 1 in the left, now back to the left, 1, 2, 3. Just going back and forth, starting with the hand with 2 balls in it. All right? That's juggling. That's juggling. And then you just go ahead and instead of stopping with 2, you just go ahead and do the third in there. So for example, we go 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. And then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and so on and so forth. It's the same thing every time. How do I put this? Truly, this is really no different than this. It's just there's one more ball in the air. That's all, okay? But let me show you this one more time, right? If I start with 2, I am going to juggle with an invisible third ball, right? There's an invisible third ball in there. And so this back and forth with 2 is no different than 3. So if you can juggle 2 balls back and forth, you can juggle 3. All right? So there you go. Give it a try. Have some fun. And with that, let's go ahead and get started.